Why it sucks to be Mars. We've sent robots, we've taken selfies, and some billionaires are already booking one-way tickets. But the truth is, Mars is a cold, airless trap that doesn't want us there. If living inside a sealed glass dome on Earth nearly broke us, what makes us think we're ready to survive on a planet that wants us dead from day one? It's funny how everyone seems to love Mars. You hear it everywhere. Tech billionaires tweeting about sending humans there, glossy documentaries hyping Martian colonization, and social media buzzing with "Mars is the future" memes. NASA's got rovers up there drilling into red dust, and kids grow up thinking space is just one big sci-fi adventure waiting to happen. Mars has become this symbol of hope and exploration, like a cosmic plan B if Earth goes sideways. But here's the part no one really mentions. Mars doesn't care about us. In fact, it's probably the worst roommate in the solar system. Before you start packing your spacesuit case and dreaming of life under a Martian dome, you should know there's already been a test run right here on Earth. It was called Biosphere 2. No, it wasn't a movie. It was real. Back in the early 1990s, 8 people locked themselves into a giant glass structure in the Arizona desert for 2 years. The goal? To create a self-sustaining environment that mimicked life on another planet. It had everything: rainforests, deserts, an ocean, farms, even animals. It was supposed to be the ultimate practice run for Mars, but it didn't go as planned. On day 1, it was all smiles. The team walked in, waved to cameras, and sealed the doors shut behind them. What followed was a mix of science, survival, and emotional chaos. They tried to grow all their own food, manage their waste, keep the air breathable, and live in perfect balance with the artificial ecosystem they'd built. It was beautiful in theory, and a slow-motion disaster in practice. Food shortages, oxygen drops, mold infestations, and group breakdowns made life inside less like The Martian and more like psychological warfare with plants. There's a problem with Mars that no one can escape, literally. There's almost no air, or more specifically, there's no air you can breathe. Mars has an atmosphere, sure, but it's thin, barely 1% the pressure of Earth's, and it's mostly made of carbon dioxide. Oxygen, the thing your lungs are completely addicted to, is almost non-existent. So anyone dreaming of setting foot on Mars isn't just thinking about where to build a base, they're thinking about how to generate every single breath they take. That's a terrifying reality. We actually tried to simulate that problem already, on Earth. In Biosphere 2, the idea was simple: create a closed environment where humans could live just like they would on another planet. No help from the outside, everything recycled. The air, the water, the food, it would all circulate in one tight, controlled loop. At first, it seemed to work. The team had over 3,000 plant species inside. Trees were growing, bananas were ripening, and oxygen was supposed to be constantly replenished. Then things started to go wrong. The crew began to feel sluggish. They were short of breath, dizzy, and couldn't think clearly. These weren't small symptoms. They were signs of oxygen deprivation like you get at high altitudes or during extreme medical emergencies. As it turned out, even though the plants were photosynthesizing, something else was stealing the oxygen. Soil microbes, tiny organisms in the dirt, were consuming more oxygen than the system could replenish. At the same time, the concrete walls of the biosphere were absorbing carbon dioxide and locking it away, which threw off the natural balance between oxygen and CO2. In the end, the oxygen levels inside Biosphere 2 dropped from 21%, normal atmospheric levels, to just 14%. That's like standing on top of Mount Everest without training. The crew couldn't function. Eventually, the managers had to break the rules and pump in oxygen from outside. It was the only way to keep the team from passing out or suffering brain damage. The moment they did that, critics said the experiment had failed, but others saw it for what it was: a brutally honest lesson in how fragile artificial atmospheres really are. You don't really think about how good food is until it becomes your full-time job. In Biosphere 2, the 8-person crew didn't just miss snacks, they became completely obsessed with food. Their entire day revolved around growing it, cooking it, and finding creative ways to stretch every calorie. It stopped being something you enjoyed and became something you fought for. Now take that obsession and place it on Mars, where the soil is sterile, the sun is weak, and radiation wants to kill everything. Hunger becomes a science project, and failure, That's starvation. The biospherians tried to grow over 80 different crops, everything from bananas to beans to peanuts and wheat. But the yields weren't great. Some plants didn't get enough sunlight. Others were attacked by pests. And without bees, who died early in the experiment, humans had to manually pollinate every flower with tiny brushes just to keep the system running. Farming went from peaceful and green to exhausting and constant. The team lost around 10 to 15% of their body weight. They ate the same things over and over. Sweet potatoes were the only real success story, so they ate them every day, sometimes 3 meals in a row. They raised goats for milk, chickens for eggs, and tilapia for protein. But even managing animals in a closed loop came with problems. Manure had to be handled perfectly, feed had to be grown inside, and stress caused by the tight environment made the animals less productive over time. The crew celebrated whenever they could scrape together enough ingredients for banana bread or soft cheese. These weren't just meals, they were morale boosters, the emotional equivalent of sunlight in a very enclosed world. Water sounds like such a basic thing until you realize Mars barely has any of it, and what it does have is locked away in the worst forms possible. Most Martian water is frozen solid beneath the surface or trapped in salty brine that would poison any human who tried to drink it. There's no river, no rain, no tap. If you want water on Mars, you have to extract it from frozen rock, purify it completely, and make it last forever. Every single drop becomes a high-stakes math equation. It's not just survival, it's precision engineering with zero margin for error. We already got a small taste of this during the Biosphere 2 experiment. Inside that sealed glass dome in Arizona, the 8-person crew had to manage their own water supply without outside input. They recycled everything, condensation from the greenhouse, steam from cooking, and yes, even their own urine. Wastewater was filtered through artificial wetlands and biological systems that needed constant tuning and maintenance. Shower times were limited, dishwater got reused, even hand-washing became a calculated act. And still, the system always hung on the edge. A single clog, a contaminated filter, or a microbial imbalance could throw off the entire water cycle. Mars turns that anxiety up to 11. You're not just dealing with limited water, you're dealing with an environment that's completely hostile to liquid water in the first place. If you want to melt ice buried underground, you need power. If you want to make it drinkable, you need filters and chemical treatments. And if your system fails, there's no Amazon delivery or emergency rescue. You're done. One error, one overlooked seal, one broken pipe, and you could be facing dehydration or disease with no way out. We tend to think of space as a technical challenge. Rockets, radiation, airlocks, those are the flashy, dramatic threats. But what broke first in Biosphere 2 wasn't the tech, it was the people. Mentally, the crew began to unravel after just a few months. They went in as a team, they came out as factions, friendships broke, trust dissolved, and communication collapsed. Even with 2 years of training and all the right skills, they couldn't hold it together. That's the part we don't talk about enough. How fast the mind can break when the walls don't move and the air doesn't change. Inside Biosphere 2, the crew had no private escape, no natural light cycles, and no real social buffer. If someone annoyed you, you couldn't walk it off or take a break. You had to eat dinner with them, farm with them, sleep in the same building, and try to pretend everything was fine. But it wasn't. Emotional pressure built up, and before long, the group split in two. They stopped speaking to each other outside of mission tasks. Meetings turned cold. There was suspicion, resentment, even paranoia. The stress of isolation didn't just simmer, it exploded. So, what are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments below.